Reading from Genesis 47, verse 7 onwards. And Joseph brought in Jacob his father and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Jacob, How old art thou? And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out before Pharaoh. Remember the situation here. Jacob and his family were starving in the midst of a famine. Out of desperation, Jacob sent his sons down to Egypt to see if there was a chance they could buy some grain to sustain themselves during the famine. After a few months of going back and forth and coming to real repentance, his brothers discovered that the second in command over all of Egypt was none other than their long-lost brother, Joseph. Joseph would be able to provide for them, but he must get Pharaoh's permission. Nothing can be done without Pharaoh's approval. So they tell their father, and Jacob agrees to pack all he has and relocate to Egypt. Though he had apprehension, and when he reached Beersheba, God met him in a dream and confirmed that he could go to Egypt. He also promised that he will be with him. So Jacob brings his own goods and livestock with him into Egypt, and they're substantial, but it's nothing compared to the great nation. He doesn't even have enough food to feed himself and his family. Any similarly desperate man would be shocked into silence when he stood before the great and mighty Pharaoh of Egypt, but not Jacob. Instead of being silent before this great world leader, Jacob answers his questions with humility while going beyond what was asked. And he surrounds his answer before and after with two blessings of Pharaoh. How could Jacob stand before Pharaoh so boldly? And how could he bless Pharaoh? If you look at the lives of the patriarchs, Abraham and Isaac, none of them had to go through the difficulties and obstacles that Jacob had to go through. Joseph indeed had to go through suffering, but they were very different from that of Jacob. He was not responsible for the evil that had come upon him. But in Jacob's case, most of the evil that came from him was because of the flaws in his character. Consider the sequence of events in his life from childhood. He lived in a home where parents were divided in their affection for their children. He snatched his brother's birthright by taking advantage of his weakness. He gained his father's blessing by deception and then was alienated from his family because of the hatred of Esau. He spent years in exile serving his deceitful uncle Laban. He sought one wife and ended up with 4. And the outcome of this was continual competition and strife. His uncle dealt deceitfully with him. He finally fled from his uncle without telling him, and God had to intervene to prevent his uncle from doing him harm. When he stayed at Shechem, instead of returning to his father's home, his daughter Dinah was violated at Shechem and feared the reprisal of Canaanite kinsmen when his sons killed the entire men of the city. Rachel, his most beloved wife, died prematurely in childbirth along the way to Bethlehem. His oldest son lay with one of his concubines, and his favorite son was tragically lost and presumed dead. His sons covered up their crime against Joseph for almost 20 years. Finally, there was a famine that threatened the existence of his family. When he sent his sons to buy food from Egypt, the ruler there imprisoned one of his sons. Finally, he had to choose between losing his whole family to starvation or putting his youngest son in danger. Jacob, you see, was correct in his evaluation of his life. But with all his troubles, we could see a very important process happening here. The children of God, down the ages, they were not named after Abraham. They were not named after Isaac, not even Joseph. They're named after Jacob or Israel. One wonders why. Jacob's character reflects that of most of the common people, with failures, mistakes, blunders, bad decisions, people who are weak and self-willed. The one thing that is in his favor is the faith that anything and everything that is good should come from God and not from man. Though weak, he will not let go of the blessing from God. Isaiah 41:14, God says, "Do not be afraid, you worm Jacob, little Israel. Do not fear, for I myself will help you, declares the Lord, your Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel." Worms are small, weak, and easily destroyed. In and of themselves, the children of Israel had no power or glory. They would be trampled by the other nations as easily as people would trample a worm. But God promises deliverance to his people, protection from their enemies, and triumph in the end. Do not fear, I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you with my righteous right hand. In the same chapter, verse 10. Israel's enemy will be vanquished because God is with them. All who rage against you will surely be ashamed and disgraced. Those who oppose you will be as nothing and perish. Verse 11. Though they were worms, a symbol of insignificance, the Lord Almighty is on their side. We see in Jacob a reflection of our life. At the end of his life, he could only say that the years of his pilgrimage were short and evil. But this feeble, battered man could bless the greatest monarch in the world. When entering his presence, he blessed him. While leaving him, he blessed him. It was not just a customary formality. It was a true blessing that Jacob put bestow upon this great monarch. In Hebrews 7:7, we read, "And without doubt, the lesser is blessed by the greater." How was Jacob better than Pharaoh? The answer lies in one word: only by the grace of God. When the grace of God is poured on a sinner, he becomes a saint. When we trust God, we see the abundant grace of God poured out through us. We are saved by grace through faith. That is all the gospel is. Jacob was chosen before his birth, a picture of our election. He was called when he was running away in the fear of his life because he had sinned against his brother Esau. We are called by God to believe the gospel and be saved while we are sinners, alienated from our Father, and often when we touch rock bottom in our lives because of our own foolishness. We have fresh encounters with God, leading to renewal and spiritual transformation, again and again at crisis points caused by our own weaknesses and faults. But like Jacob, through whom the promise to Abraham is fulfilled, you will be a blessing. We will become blessings to our generations, not because of, but despite our weaknesses and our foolish attempts to fulfill for ourselves what God has already promised to give us. The Christian life is not a self-made one. It is always because of and through and to God forever and ever. He alone is the one who authors and finishes our faith. To him be the glory forever and ever. A few lines of an old poem came to mind. This poem was on the desk of the great man of God called John Haggai, and he always kept it as a reminder of his own life. It reads like this: "He was better to me than all my hopes." Talking about God here, okay? "He was better to me than all my hopes. He was better than all my fears. He made a bridge of my broken works and a rainbow of my tears. God bless.